I mean, when you look at my story, it's crazy when you think about the whole thing. I mean, by the time I was 18 years old, I owned my second nightclub. I had 2 nightclubs by that point. And like with my whole court case, it's so confusing with like the dynamics because everyone thought it had to do with the nightclub, but it really didn't. It had to do with these concerts that I raised. I raised about $500,000 from friends and family to do concerts at colleges and in different clubs in different markets in Rhode Island and Massachusetts and Connecticut. And the problem is like you put all those money into concerts that may or may not make money, very high risk business, and you're doing it as a promoter. If you lose, you have nothing to have to like you have no brand. Whereas like if you owned a venue yourself, if you owned it, if you lost some money, you would at least have some credibility in a brand. So I lost everything by the time I'm 18 on these concerts with big acts like Tyga, Big Sean, Chief Keef, big names, lost everything and had nothing to show for it. So when I went on to my act 2, which was to get the idea to go back to my roots and reopen the club that I used to promote at that had closed, I was in so much debt, I could never get ahead. I would take good money I'd make on a show and pay off old, bad money, old investors. I could never pay my bills. I used to put piles of wood in front of the meter, the electric meter, so the electric company wouldn't shut off my power. I had a $30,000 bill one time. I would go months, like I owed the chain smokers $30,000 at one point. I was pawning off my car and refrigerators and shit in the club just to pay it back. I would send fake wire receipts just to delay time. So it was just one giant mess. And what ends up happening is during the time of running the club, I'm investigated by the FBI and the IRS for those previous concerts. And they had accused me of running a Ponzi scheme, which was never my intention. It just, looking back on it, happened to be a Ponzi scheme because I would take a loan from you to pay off another loan because in the concert business, there's no cash flow. You're taking a big investment for a payoff that might happen 6 months from now or a year from now on this concert. But I was promising returns way sooner than that. So I wasn't selling merchandise or a service or anything like that. So I had no cash flow. So I was using investor, lender money, whatever, because I didn't have any credit. I was using that as like a bridge loan to pay off other investors and loans just until the concerts happened. And this would have worked out perfectly had the concerts sold out and made money, but they didn't. So that was the epic failure, and that started the investigation when everyone complained. And we did stupid things with the business money, like buy jet skis and take trips and go out to dinner because we were just thinking we needed to take a salary. We were 18 years old, me and my business partner with way too much money. I didn't do any accounting until, a year or two down the road. There was no receipts. There was nothing. It was a giant mess.
What is this doing to your mental health during this time? Paying, taking investments here, paying, this company that you owe money to, that kind of lifestyle. What is it doing to your mental health?
Dude, physically, I was my heaviest when I went to prison, I was like 290 pounds. Very chubby. I would always eat like fast food. It's emotionally draining. Like I couldn't keep a relationship because I was so stressed. I gave up some great women because I was so focused on the business because I've had to put everything into it. And it's just like you're taking, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire, but you think the gasoline's water. That would be the best example. And you're dumping this water to put it on, but it's really gasoline. And it just keeps making the fire bigger and bigger, and you're burning everything that's around you. There's no life. So it sucks everything out of you. And then when I started borrowing money from even shadier figures like bikers and drug dealers, that's what really put my personal life at risk too. So when you have the heat of that and then the heat of law enforcement and then the heat of letting your friends and families down from someone that always wanted to be liked and everyone's starting to talk bad about you and spread all of these, rumors about you because they make it seem like, I scammed them, which was never my intention. It was a pitfall. It was humiliating and it was exhausting and it was demoralizing and it was just, I was in a very depressed state for a long time. And I remember when I went to prison, that was when I first got some relief because I needed to be physically removed from that situation. Yep. And when I finally got removed from all of that stress, that's what I think. Going to prison was the best thing that could ever happen to me, because if it wasn't for prison, I probably still would have been running the club, because that's how my mind works. Like, I'm going to find a way no matter what. So I never would have walked away from it had I wasn't physically removed from that situation.
So what was the arrest like? Did they just come to your house and, SWAT team? What did that look like? And then the process of, being, indicted and arraignment, et cetera.
So we knew that me and my attorney knew that the feds were investigating anyone that gets arrested by the federal government. It's not a surprise. You get served a target letter, for months and months, and you kind of see that with high profile figures when they're doing raids and whatnot. In advance before anyone gets arrested. So we were well aware. We had meetings with them, and my lawyer said, hey, you're going to be indicted. We're just waiting, but you'll be able to turn yourself in. Well, because I was running the club and I was kind of in their face and I wasn't willing to make a deal because they were offering me prison time right off the bat and whatnot, they decided to raid my house at 5 a.m, my parents' house, 5 or 6 a.m. I just got back from the casino. It was a January, cold, snowy day. Got back from the casino at like 4 a.m., lost everything again because I would play Baccarat in Yonkers Raceway, because I wasn't 21. I couldn't go to the Connecticut casino. And I would sit there and I would gamble. And most of the time I won, I would say 90% of it, but there were times I lost. And I would turn 500 into, say, 20 or 30 grand sometimes, which would always save me from almost getting blacklisted from an artist agent or a drug dealer beating the shit out of me. Like, I used it as a resource, and as an addict, you kind of go to what works for you. So that morning I get home and I go to bed, and I wake up to a loud thud at the door, and I look out the window and the place is just swarmed. FBI, IRS, they're criminal agents with the IRS, postal inspectors, local police, state troopers, swarmed up and down the road, all around, and they're just banging on the door, and my mom rushes down the stairs, opens the door, and they're like, step back, hold the dog. My dad's coming down. They're like, where is he? And at this point, I had been arrested a couple times by local police for liquor violations and criminal mischief charge. So I'm thinking, okay, this is another, what now? This is another local case, because my attorney said the Fed case was still pending and we'll turn ourselves in. And then they were like, do you know what you're being arrested for? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know what this is about. And then I recognized the case agent, who was one of the head FBI officials on my case. And in that moment, they said to me, what's the passcode to your phone? And dumb Ian, under pressure, gave them the passcode to my phone, which at the time they were going through the legal battles with Apple, where Apple wasn't giving up passwords or whatnot. So I don't think they would even have been able to get into it, or whatever the situation was.
Can't subpoena it, no.
They can't at all, even during a criminal investigation.
Unless there is a life taken, usually.
Okay. Yeah.
Generally.
Yeah, so I gave them the password. They got in, and all those photos came back to haunt me in trial. Like, every time I got a tattoo or took a trip, it just put all the dates together, And so I gave them that. They hauled me out of the house. They made me wear these ugly cowboy boots because I didn't have shoes without laces, and I was in Annie Get Your Gun in high school. So they had me put those on that were in my closet, and they dragged me out of the house, and they put me on the curb because it was like a scene from the movie. They wanted to wait for the initial Danbury Police Department detective to come just to say, ha, we got you. Finally, do you remember me? And so we're in the car, and I'm with two postal inspectors. One's armed next to me in the back seat. The other one's driving, and it's like a 3-hour ride because it was snowing. What only should have been a 45-minute ride to the courthouse. We go to the courthouse. I get arraigned, and I get out in a few hours because it was a $250,000 bond, but in the feds, all you need is a signature. So I got out on bond after getting arraigned. They banned me from social media, which, looking at all the stuff that's going on in the news now and stuff, if I appealed that condition, I probably would have won, because that was a violation of my amendments, because I was literally banned on social media during the case because the prosecutors were like, he'll use social media to talk to victims. But what they were really trying to do was just hamper my ability to run the club, because the club needed social media. All throughout the case, all throughout the trial, I was still actively running the club. I would be on trial, And I got arraigned on 15 federal charges: money laundering, making a false statement, and wire fraud. And I would go to trial. My trial was almost a month long. This was like 11 months later after arraignment. And I would go to trial, a full day of trial, and then I'd race back to put on a show with one of the biggest DJs in the world. It was just such a crazy thing.